It's one thing to be loved by millions. It's another to be hated by legends. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of heavy metal, the man who bit the head off a bat and redefined what it meant to be outrageous, wild, and utterly unpredictable. His name is etched in the very fabric of rock history. But behind the record-breaking tours, the platinum albums, and the TV fame lurked something darker: resentment. For all the fans who worshipped Ozzy, there were icons who couldn't stand him. Not just casual disagreements. We're talking bitter feuds, personal insults, cold shoulders, rejections that festered for decades. Some saw him as a fraud, others called him a circus act, and one helped build his empire, only to turn against him in the end. Today, we're diving into the 6 most shocking rivalries that prove even Ozzy Osbourne couldn't charm everyone. From former bandmates to fellow metal titans, these are the musicians who absolutely hated Ozzy, publicly, privately, and sometimes both. Let's begin. It's the feud that split a genre. When Ronnie James Dio replaced Ozzy in Black Sabbath in 1979, fans were divided. But behind the scenes, the divide was even deeper, more personal, more venomous. Ronnie wasn't just any singer. He was a vocal powerhouse, the mystical voice behind Rainbow and later Heaven and Hell, a man who brought dragons and fantasy into heavy metal and did it with operatic power. And Ozzy? To Dio, he wasn't a musician. He was a performer, a jester, a clown who, in Dio's own words, stumbled into greatness. According to journalist Malcolm Dome, Dio was furious that Ozzy's stage antics, biting heads off animals, cross-dressing, stumbling around on TV, overshadowed what Dio saw as the soul of metal. There are entertainers, Dio once said, and there are musicians. Some people confuse the two. While Dio was constructing elaborate mythologies, Ozzy was throwing raw meat into the audience. It all came to a head backstage in 1985. Witnesses say Dio snubbed Ozzy outright, turned away with a mutter about real metal versus cartoon metal. The disdain never faded. Even decades later, Dio would blast circus acts in interviews, never naming Ozzy directly, but always with that same icy implication. In the war between dignity and debauchery, Dio never forgave the man who, in his eyes, made a mockery of the genre he helped build. To Phil Anselmo, Ozzy wasn't a legend, he was a relic. The Pantera frontman emerged in the 1990s as metal's new enforcer, loud, aggressive, and relentlessly forward-thinking. He didn't want to preserve metal's past, he wanted to smash it. So when he looked at Ozzy, still touring, still packing arenas, still playing the same Black Sabbath songs from the 70s, he didn't see greatness, he saw stagnation. In a never-published 1994 interview, Anselmo reportedly called Ozzy a has-been riding on decades-old glory. While Anselmo was pushing groove metal into darker, heavier territory, Ozzy to him represented nostalgia metal, a museum exhibit of the past. At a festival in 1995, the Cold War became ice. Witnesses claim that when introduced to Ozzy backstage, Anselmo flatly refused to shake his hand. "I don't shake hands with people who've turned metal into a joke," he allegedly said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ozzy never fired back. He didn't escalate. But the silence between them? Deafening. Even as Ozzy prepared for retirement tours, Anselmo remained unmoved. "He's from a different era," he'd say. No warmth, no praise, just a cold recognition that, to him, Ozzy no longer mattered. Bruce Dickinson didn't just dislike Ozzy, he dismissed him. As Iron Maiden's commanding frontman, Dickinson had built a brand on precision, historical storytelling, and technical skill. In the world of British metal, Maiden was academia. Black Sabbath with Ozzy? Circus school. According to Kerrang. Founder Jeff Barton, Dickinson once told reporters that Ozzy's career proved marketing could overpower talent. "He's more P.T. Barnum than Robert Plant," he said. To Dickinson, Ozzy wasn't a musician. He was a gimmick. It wasn't just about bats and blood. It was about legacy. While Maiden crafted elaborate albums and conceptual worlds, Ozzy's headlines were all about shock value. In a German radio interview in 1983, Dickinson made his position painfully clear. Real metal doesn't need gimmicks. It should stand on musical merit, not how many dead animals you can mutilate on stage. At an industry party in 1984, Dickinson reportedly refused to be photographed with Ozzy, saying, "Some associations damage your credibility as a serious musician." And when asked years later to name his influences, Dickinson would list legends: Robert Plant, Ian Gillan, Freddie Mercury, but never Ozzy. Because to him, Ozzy wasn't just unworthy of praise. He was an embarrassment. This feud wasn't about ideology. It was about ego. Dave Mustaine, fired from Metallica, driven by vengeance and obsessed with proving himself, approached Ozzy's camp in the mid-'80s. He wanted a tour slot, a collaboration, something that would solidify Megadeth's rise. He got silence, rejection, and he never forgot it. Ozzy's camp allegedly saw Mustaine and Megadeth as angry noise. In one interview, Ozzy was quoted saying, "These new thrash bands are just angry kids making angry noise. Where's the melody? Where's the soul?" To Mustaine, that wasn't just criticism, that was war. As Ozzy built Ozzfest into the dominant touring festival of the 1990s, Megadeth was conspicuously absent. Mustaine believed it was intentional. "Dinosaurs keeping real bands off the stage," he once told Metal Hammer. At a 1998 awards show, Mustaine reportedly refused to greet Ozzy. He turned away, muttered, "Respect is earned, not inherited," and walked off. Ozzy looked confused, but Mustaine, he looked vindicated. For him, this wasn't about metal. It was about being seen, and in his mind, Ozzy had refused to see him. If there was one artist who could match Ozzy's love for theatricality, it was Blackie Lawless. But that's exactly why he hated him. As the mastermind behind WASP, Lawless built entire concerts around horror, spectacle, and elaborate stage effects. He wanted to make the macabre meaningful. So when Ozzy, in his eyes, became famous off a single shocking moment, the bat incident, Lawless saw red. He called Ozzy a one-trick pony who got lucky. He mocked his stage show as sloppy shock value that wouldn't pass muster in a high school drama class. Lawless believed his horror had art. Ozzy's, just chaos. The tension peaked during the PMRC hearings, when both artists were targeted for corrupting youth. Instead of forming a united front, Lawless reportedly refused to even sit at the same table as Ozzy during an industry discussion. "I won't be associated with Amateur Hour," he allegedly said. Years later, when asked to name the greatest shock rockers in history, Lawless praised Alice Cooper and said nothing about Ozzy. Because in his mind, Ozzy wasn't just a lesser artist. He was a pretender. Now for the most tragic feud of all, Tony Iommi, the man who created heavy metal, the guitarist behind Sabbath's sinister riffs, and the architect of Ozzy's rise to stardom. They started as brothers in arms, musical soulmates. But by the late 1970s, everything had fallen apart. Ozzy's drug use, his unreliability, his refusal to evolve. Iommi reached a breaking point. Ozzy became a liability masquerading as a frontman, he reportedly told associates. To Iommi, Ozzy wasn't just wasting his talent, he was dragging the entire band into chaos. The split was brutal, and although public reunions would follow, tours, performances, even Hall of Fame inductions, they never truly reconciled. At a 1997 reunion rehearsal, Iommi allegedly spoke to Ozzy only when musically necessary. No eye contact, no small talk, nothing personal. During their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony, Iommi didn't even mention Ozzy in his acceptance speech, because this feud wasn't about metal, It was about betrayal. Ozzy Osbourne isn't just a legend, he's a lightning rod. For every sold-out show, there was a backstage feud. For every hit single, a backhanded insult. For every die-hard fan, a bitter rival. Some hated his theatrics, others his refusal to evolve, and some just hated that he made it when they didn't. But here's the twist: Ozzy never stopped. He wore the hate like armor, and in doing so became something even bigger than his critics imagined. He became untouchable, because while they fumed, Ozzy kept laughing, performing, shocking, living. In the end, that's the real story of the Prince of Darkness. Not the feuds he had, but the fire they couldn't extinguish. Which feud shocked you the most? Was it the betrayal from Tony Iommi, the venom from Bruce Dickinson, or the cold shoulder from Phil Anselmo? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if you love metal, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive stories from the backstage world of rock. Because here, the show never ends, and neither do the secrets.